Hey guys, this is going to be a very short video. I really just want to, again, show you guys how this works. So when I made the last video, I had mentioned, and I don't remember what it was, but I had mentioned this is probably gonna be one of the first things they say to me, and they have, when it comes to directed conversations and whatnot, when I go out, next time. And well, they had referenced things that I said in the last video. Um, Today and other things too, but let me start at the beginning. So I had a doctor's appointment today. Again, it was a blood pressure check, and so that was okay. We are going to be lowering my blood pressure, my medicine just a little bit, to see if my blood pressure stays normal. It does get kind of low, but it also gets kind of high when I'm stressed, and it's difficult to get an accurate reading at the doctor because I'm always stressed. They have people follow me there. Whoever's running this program has people follow me to the doctor and provoke the entire time. So I'm stressed by the time I get there. So what was happening is I was on blood pressure medication. I still am, but the dose was too high. And when I would come home and if I could relax for a little while, my blood pressure would go down, way down, and I'd get really dizzy and everything. So anyway, that's not the point. So I took a cab to the doctor, and I went in, and I sat down, and not too long after I walked in, some guy came in, and he looked Eastern European. He looked Eastern European, and did you hear that pounding? I'm glad we caught that in the video. I hope you heard it. Anyway, he looked Eastern European, and this guy really did look Eastern European. He had the dark hair, that kind of look, right? Um, so he came in, and as he sat down, he mimicked my mannerisms. He mimicked my gestures that I was making at the time and gestures that I made at home. When I crossed my ankle and one foot over my knee, he did the same. When I took it down, he did the same. So they were telling, and he wasn't looking at a cell phone. So he did have one of those little iPods or something in his ear. I don't know if it was an iPod or not, but they were clearly giving him instructions because he was literally mimicking me right there. And since we were at the doctor's office, I could not take out my phone out and film. If I had taken my phone out to start filming, he would have reported me. Okay, so he then he took his bag, which I didn't notice until then, and he put it with the words facing me, and it said something like, what did it say? I can't live without books, or something like that. Now, this is in reference to something I said yesterday. Now, and it's also in reference to another video I made. So I've spoken about how a lot of times positive movements are used in order to achieve negative events, in order to achieve something negative. So, for example, you know, uh, the whole, dieting is a good idea. The whole, get healthy movement, that's a good thing. That's a very good thing. But when it's used in order to justify terrorizing people and justify, making it okay to harass some group and to force the people in that group to go along with anything, otherwise, telling them, oh, otherwise condemning them for that, that's when it becomes bad, okay? And so the same thing I was thinking yesterday, with the show Hoarders. I don't watch that much because it's irritating. But now, and I know what it's like to deal with hoarders. I've had to my entire life, and it's horrible. I cannot stand it. I cannot stand it. So I'm, I don't like hoarders. I don't like the idea of hoarding. But what was happening on the show was, um, instead of throwing out all the junk, someone wanted the person to throw out all the books. And now books there's no reason books have to be thrown out. You get a bookshelf and you put them on the bookshelf, right? But I found it ironic that those are the only items that came into question. And if the hoarder didn't throw them out, all it would do, according to the producer of the show, or the therapist or whoever that was, all that would do is prove that, oh yeah, she has a disease and can't stop hoarding. Now, it's important to save written documents, and that includes, hardcover books. That's important. And I understand why the rulers would want these things thrown out so that history is not remembered as it happened. So, even though I don't like the idea of hoarding, I would never want to live with a hoarder ever again, because I've had to do that in the past. I've had to live with hoarders, and it's miserable. Uh, I still don't like the fact that a show that's meant to to hopefully help people who have a problem, to if not to cure a disease, to help the people, is instead, there's an underlying negative intent there, or there could be. Anyway, so I was saying that in the apartment, and so what happens? Do you hear that? They're pounding. Hear that? Okay. So yeah, as I was sitting in the doctor's office today, the guy, he had his bag, and it said something like, "I can't live without books," or something like that. I don't know. So again, it was in reference to something I said in the apartment. Moving on. He's every move, pretty much move I make, he's copying, and they're trying to piss me off right at the doctor's office because I know they want me to end up with a mental health diagnosis. So I'm sitting there trying to stay calm, and he's really going at it. Normally, they won't mirror me. They won't quite mirror me, right? They'll mimic things that I've done at home. They'll mimic some of my gestures, but they won't 100% mirror me, like copy everything I'm doing. He mirrored me. My actions, he was copying everything I was doing. It was meant to piss me off. Okay, and then he looked over at me, gave the nose rub, and I took out my cell phone to just document in a notepad what they were doing, because I couldn't hold it up to him to record him. He would have reported me then. Another guy came in, waited around, and he's just waiting around by the door, and he's kind of looking at me, and I was pretending not to look, but I had my head down, and I was kind of glancing up every now and then, and he waited for a few minutes there, just kind of coughing and clearing his throat and trying to get my attention until I finally looked up, and then he gave the nose gesture. Okay, that's what happened to the doctor. So on the way home, as soon as I left, as I was waiting for the bus, I took the bus back, and I had to make a stop before I went home. From that point on, it was no longer Eastern European men. It was women, women of all races. So the first woman came by, and she was Hispanic, and she was having this loud conversation on her cell phone about a funeral. And this happens a lot to me. I'll have someone on their cell phone making funeral comments, talking about funerals, and talking about death, and the death of a guy, right? And I to comment what I can't really repeat what they've said, but so this woman, this happened again. This has happened a few times now. She's having a really loud conversation about funerals and about the death of a guy, and she's looking back at me as she's speaking loudly. And I left the little bus shelter, and I kind of stood off to the side. Okay. Then another woman came back. Okay, and she walks by the bus shelter, and she starts having a loud conversation about cheating and adultery, and then two guys too walk by. They made some crude gesture about how someone effed someone else, and she effed someone else or something like that. I don't know. And women kept walking by, and these people apparently didn't know each other. But again, always these loud conversations on their phone about someone cheated, or someone did this, or someone did that, or someone is, cheating. Well, now when it happens once, okay, people are having a bad day, right? That's their comment. They're having a bad day. But when it happens more than once, when that same conversation follows you everywhere, this is a directed conversation. Okay, I had to stop at the store to pick a few things up. Another woman, she's on her cell phone talking very loudly, and as she passes me, she's talking about adultery again, and she's talking about someone cheating, and very loudly. Okay, and this kept following me everywhere with different women. Now, this cannot be in reference to anything I've done or experienced, because I'm completely celibate. I don't have a significant other. So even if I did, I would never cheat on them. And of course, I'm not being cheated on because I don't have a significant other, and I'm not going to, right? I'm 100% celibate. So these conversations could not have been in regard to anything I've done, and yet they're directing it at me. They just keep having these different people come by me speaking very loudly, having the exact same conversation. And it sounds crazy. I know it does. And this is why it's so hard to prove that they're doing it. And targets sound crazy when they report what's happening. Okay, I leave and I get on the bus. As I walk on the bus, again, another woman speaking very loudly into her cell phone, and I don't care what she's saying. I don't know what she's talking about. I walk back, but she looks at me as soon as I get on, and her eyes kind of light up, and she starts speaking even louder, and she kind of follows. I look back at her a little bit, and she kind of follows me with her eyes, and I sit in back, not too far. Like I sit kind of in the middle because the back was crowded. I wouldn't have been able to sit in the back, so I sit, and there are two people in front of me diagonally, and they start having a conversation about the woman who's speaking loudly up front. And it's a man and a woman now. Is the man, okay. And the man makes a comment to the woman sitting by him, that woman up there is speaking so loudly. This is crazy. And the woman responds to him, saying, yeah, she's speaking so loudly. And this has been going on for a long time. And she's speaking about something that's not even her business. She's talking about some caregiver who's always running around and out and not taking care of his mother at home. Remember the video I made? Go, if you don't know what that is in reference to, watch my last video. My last video was about how these perpetrators run around earning their income at the expense of other people. They earn a living at our expense. Okay, they earn money by hurting people, by hunting and stalking and terrorizing people. So they, of all people, have no right to make comments about the targets not having enough money or not having a good enough job or not having a proper enough job. The perpetrators don't have a proper job, right? They earn money. They get paid to hunt, stalk, and terrorize lone targets. What kind of worthless job is that? They're not benefiting anyone. They're hurting people. But so yesterday I was talking about how caregivers, actually benefit people. They don't get paid a lot, but their job is noble. It's hard, but it's noble. And even though they don't necessarily earn as much as the perpetrators do for perpetrating, caregivers actually have value to society, unlike the perpetrators who only ever hurt people and cause trouble. And, I talked about how sometimes it's hard for caregivers if they're a sole caregiver and they have to stay with the person they're caring for and they can't always leave. They don't always have room to just go and walk out. They go where they want or even walk around the block. So this witch, now, and I think these three were working together. The two that I was sitting by, I think they were working with that woman up front. So this woman who was sitting by me now with the guy, she's talking about, supposedly angry with the woman up front, and she says things like, oh yeah, this woman is going on and on and on about some caregiver who isn't at home and who's supposed to be at home taking care of his mother, but he's always out running around. You know damn well who and what that was directed at. Okay, they were trying to piss me off. And today, again, it just goes to show that perpetrators come from all groups. Okay, the first few were Eastern European males. Okay, because that's just the doctor's office I go to. It's going to be mostly guys. So yeah, and then later when I left, it was predominantly women. Such is life. Peace.